It's also unrefinement, and it has really strong latency in some of our testing, but it has trouble with frame time pacing. It also, occasionally, has obnoxious fan acoustic issues. We bought this Legion Go for our testing today. It was $700 when we bought it, although we did buy two for reasons we'll talk about later. Neither of those really compares to the thousands of dollars we spent testing time on it, but that's a different story. And the handheld PC market is really heating up. You can check out our DEC OLED or Ally reviews for some of the specifics on those, but now we'll focus on something new, the Lenovo Legion Go. Before that, this video is brought to you by Arctic and the Liquid Freezer 3, which we've tested using our standard methodology and found to be one of the most and efficient you can pull with our charts. The Liquid Freezer 3 includes rise and offset mounting to improve AMD performance and uses a thicker radiator to further lower the temperature. Arctic has priced these competitively for AIOs, and you can learn more at the link in the description below. There's a ton of room for brains in these devices, and they're still figuring out some of the basics. So things like the ergonomics of the handheld itself, they haven't been perfected yet. That means there's a ton of room for advancement with each different device that comes out. We'll have a separate teardown for this as well, going up pretty soon. Couldn't fit it all in just one video, so keep an eye out for that. But today the focus will be on some subjective hardware features. We'll also be talking about software, firmware bugs, acoustics, gaming performance, latency performance, and related to gaming, battery life, thermals, charge time, all that stuff. There's a lot to cover. First, start with the spec sheet. The Go spec sheet also lists the much less powerful non-Xtreme one as an option. So get ready for some Ally-style naming confusion when that releases. But for the one we have, the Go's memory is 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X, the same capacity as Asus's Ally handhelds, but clocked higher at 7,500 megatransfers per second. 16 gigabytes is starting to feel cramped for gaming on Windows these days, especially when a chunk of that is set aside for VRAM. The battery capacity is also more comparable to the DEC OLED. Here's a recap of just a fraction of the handheld PC market right now. The Steam Deck OLED we just reviewed costs $550 to $650 on the channel if you want to see it. The DEC LCD is $350 with an eMMC SSD to $550. The Asus ROG Ally, not confused with the ROG Ally, is $400. The ROG Ally, meanwhile, is $600. Lenovo's Legion Go, meanwhile, is $650 to $700, depending on how much storage capacity you buy. Aya Neo seemingly has an infinitely filling bag of holding overwhelmingly erupting with handhelds because we can't keep up with the amount they release. They seem to really excel, though, with custom colorways, and we actually just ordered an Air 1S, so it's something a little off the smaller side compared to these. The most recent launch is the Flint, which is priced between $1,130 to $1,809. We're also soon releasing the Flip PS for $700 and up. There are a lot more on the market, like the $300 and up AYN Odin 2 or Qualcomm Android solution, and also making a name for itself with colorways, but maybe that's another time. Then, of course, there's the Nintendo Switch. We won't be focusing on much because it's got a completely different gaming and software ecosystem, but it is worth considering. Right off the bat, though, the Legion Go looks ginormous compared to just about everything else, but in actuality, it's not that much larger than the DEC. Difference does matter, though. It is, however, a good perspective for Nintendo Switch society and why the power is. The Go is bigger than the DEC, but only top to bottom and only by 1.4 centimeters. That 1.4 centimeters matters, though, especially since the Steam Deck is already notoriously large. But it's not the whole reason that the Go looks gigantic. That impression is created by a combination of the Go's 8.8-inch screen with narrow bezels, the Steam Deck 7 inches, and the Go's chunky detachable controller grips. Lenovo claims a total weight of 854 grams, or pointlessly 640 grams without the controller. We measured to 863 grams in our testing against calibrated weights, but that does make it the heaviest handheld that we've tested by far. The previous record holder was the Steam Deck LCD, measured at 676 grams. The detachable grips are definitely the most unique aspect of this so far, though. So for the Nintendo Switch, the use cases of the detachable Joy-Con include being able to hand one to a friend, so it's a fully discrete, usable controller for games that support multiplayer on the same device or other devices. And additionally, you can connect them into an interlocking component to turn into one semi-decent controller. Beyond that, there's the option of docking the Switch, of course, and turning it into functionally a gaming console and using them remotely for that, one or two player. And you can hook them into accessories like the Ring Fit or the Lava. The only one of those the Go can do out of the box is the first one, using it as a standalone display with a detached controller. And maybe the peripheral dock, if you count FPS, we'll cover that separately next. The two Lenovo grips can't reasonably be used as two fully discrete controllers like they can on the Switch. We tried a lot, and we just couldn't get them to consistently be usable as two inputs. In instances where you could get them to work as two inputs, which is technically a possibility by switching to dual D input mode and using Bluetooth, you'll still only have two separate, very unergonomic paths of the controller. The games would have to be very simple or likely older to be playable at all with the buttons available, which is fine as long as you're aware of them. Remember, though, that you can always just bring a separate controller and connect that through native Windows functionality for two complete controls and inputs. Or you could remap what you have with the Joy-Con or emulator games or simpler titles. But don't expect this to work like the Switch. It doesn't. And it will not only be frustrating, but also have limited compatibility. To be clear, Lenovo is not marketing on it in that way. That's fine, but we want to make sure everybody who's thinking about buying this understands the limitation. It's easy to get the wrong idea if you don't do a lot of research. Additionally, it does not ship with any connecting memory. We link them into a single separate controller. If you were to want that, it has to be purchased separately. There is still value in detachment controllers, but we think it's important to objectively identify what that value is before buying into it, because you should not think of it out of equivalent to this. The FPS mode we mentioned is a really unique and clever implementation. It entails flipping a switch on the bottom of the right controller, sliding it off of the wall, popping it into the Teflon back magnetic ring, and pulling the thumbstick off so that it doesn't stick into your palm. Despite other limitations, it's a clever design. It's relatively fun to how it came together. There's an optical sensor on the bottom of the controller, turning it into a vertical mouse that moves like the joystick, but as Lenovo repeatedly and dramatically warns every single time FPS mode is turned on, it is not a joystick. We found the control scheme of using the right controller as a mouse and left as a joystick controller worked surprisingly well in games like Cyberpunk 2077. We were skeptical at first, but it worked out. In our opinion, though, the so-called mouse is unpleasant to use in a non-gaming scenario, like just on the desktop. It would work better if the controller snaps firmly into the base. As it is, it's free to wobble around. The base itself is narrow enough that the whole mouse can tip back and forth. Alternatively, we've discovered another use case. You can leave the controller attached to the Go and slide the entire thing around on the desk as a mouse. Lenovo characterizes the Go as a base module and true strike controller, which could imply some other controller options. From a port perspective, this has USB 4 Type-C ports, but the most important aspect is the fact that there are two of them. The Ally and the Deck variant only have one port, which means if you want to charge it and plug something in at the same time, you need a dongle for that, and there's limitations to that. The Go's display runs at 144 Hz, but doesn't support FreeSync or other variable refresh rate methods. The image is extremely crisp, but we've already noted that even the Ally's 1080p screen is at the point of diminishing fidelity in such a small panel that I'm playing. One big thing with this is the insane amount of inputs though. So in addition to the normal button, where we have a D-pad, we've got two analog sticks, there's two kind of option buttons up here, the face button of course, we've got two more option buttons down here. There's also, on the back, completely ridiculous, the fact that, as we say, this turns into a mouse, so an optical sensor. It additionally has a scroll wheel, so they're trying to accommodate every function on a mouse, which adds a lot of buttons. You've got the trigger and the bumper up here. There's another button in here as a grip button, and then, of course, we've got the rest that I just described, plus a touchpad. On the other one, oh, actually, there's also two buttons right there that I had not mentioned. On the other one, though, we have even more. There's two more grip buttons here. There's again the bumper and the trigger. So maybe an upside, completely insane amount of buttons. We did have accidental button presses, but fortunately they're mapped in a way where it didn't tend to cause any problems. Time to get into test. It's a really complicated test matrix this time. So the Go's native display resolution is 2560 by 1600. That complicates things. That is 4 times the pixel count of the Steam Deck. And as a result of that, because there are only 3 supported modes out of the box, the 1280 by 800, 1920 by 1200, and then the 2560 by 1600 solution, we have to make some compromises. Previously, we used 1280 by 720 for our testing as the highest common resolution to ensure a fair and like-for-like comparison between devices. It's a scientific method. For these tests, we've used 1280 by 800 whenever possible, and then in some additional testing, we have 2560 by 1600 exclusively on the go. And that is looked at less from a comparative standpoint, because these can't do it, and more of a, can you use it at all, or what is the use? What can you expect? The performance profiles are critical to testing, though, need some explanation. That's because on the go, they need some improvement. Using the basic Lenovo user interface, there are 3 main performance options. There's thermal mode, or TDP, OS power mode, and fan. The fan curve setting is bound to the TDP setting, and to easily change these, the Legion Go bundles the settings into 2 customizable presets named performance and power saving. When we first got our Go, it was set to power saving, but the out-of-the-box values were different from the ones that we got by hitting restore defaults. In other words, our Legion Go had outdated presets. We dumped an unreasonable amount of time and effort into straightening this out, like literally a week of testing, and this eventually led to us just buying a second brand new off-the-shelf Legion Go. Now we've doubled our investment in just the hardware. The out-of-the-box preset had a different name for this one because it was a different batch. This one was called Custom 1, but the settings were the same as they had been on the original. The power saving and the performance profiles were set up correctly, but the Legion Go doesn't auto-swap between profiles when a charger is connected, like the Ally. So the out-of-the-box settings are very relevant. Here's a summary of our internal naming. We can come back to timestamps if the charts get confusing. 1A is completely unmodified out of the box. TDP is balanced for this. OS power mode is performance. 1B is the up-to-date power saving profile. TDP is quiet. OS mode for power is efficiency for this one. 2A isn't important. This was the old performance profile on our original unit with settings completely maxed out, which leads to actually terrible performance on battery power. This won't show up on new units as far as we can tell, but it's on the charts if you're curious. And as a note, the second unit that we bought just this week, the last week of February, it had November updates on it. It's been on the shelf for a little while, so it's possible you get something old enough. 2B is the up-to-date performance profile. TDP and OS power mode are both performance. 2C is the Legion Go completely maxed out 30-watt TDP with a wall charger connected, which allows the APU to operate at full power. All other tests were done on battery power, unless stated otherwise. Note that the Ally's performance profile is not the same as the Go's performance profile. The Ally has silent performance, turbo 25 watts on battery, and turbo 30 watts on wall power. The Go has power saving and performance. Time to get into testing. We'll start with latency. This testing evaluates the total end-to-end system latency, which is the entire pipeline that we're showing you on the screen now. We noticed a lot of people are still mixing up the input latency, sometimes called input lag, and end-to-end system latency on the Steam Deck and the Ally subreddits in particular. To be very clear, we are testing the totality of the entire pipeline you're looking at, from input to output. That means the PC latency and the render queue and pipeline are included, some of which is frame time dependent. Because this is a holistic look at a complete device and not an isolated component, this is the best way to evaluate latency. It factors in the screen and the input with the rendering pipeline. Testing is done with a minimum of 100 test passes per instance, and if you want to learn more about all of this, you can watch our deep dive interview and discussion with an expert, linked in the description below. We did our first set of latency tests using Dying Light 2 as representative of a 3D game that's limited by the Z1 Extreme chip. The results broadly correlate with average frame rate. The Go's power saving profile with restored defaults is at the bottom of the stack at an abysmal 186 milliseconds. The original performance profile and restored default performance profile are above it, effectively tied with each other at 148 and 152 milliseconds. And the restored default performance 2B is the exception, as it performs significantly better in terms of average frame rate, but not system latency. Past that, the stack returns to frame rate hierarchical ranking. The original power saving profile is there, and then the OLED, then the Z1 Extreme. The Go, with its maxed out of the box performance profile and wall power, tops the chart at 106 milliseconds. The power saving 1V result is bad enough that you notice the latency of the game. For our next latency test, we used a sample application from NVIDIA that just flashes white when a button is pressed. The render rate was intentionally capped at 120 Hz. If you take a look at a breakdown of system latency from the prior pipeline image, by controlling both the software and the render rate, you can control most of the central chunk from game latency to render latency, allowing us to compare peripheral latency and display latency in near isolation. Although the render rate was capped, VSync was not enabled, but necessary. We used this synthetic test so we can compare running the Go's controllers wired versus wireless. It doesn't represent gaming performance, it's attempting to isolate for that wireless variable. Here's the chart. Baseline is 27 milliseconds for wired controllers, using the right side controller as our chosen input device, disconnecting it and running it wirelessly, ended up adding 9.3 milliseconds to the average latency. That landed it at 36.4 milliseconds. That's slightly more than the duration of one frame time at 120 FPS, which would be 8.3 milliseconds. We also ran this against the ROG Ally, which is why we limited the render rate to the Ally's maximum 120 Hz refresh rate rather than the Go's 144 Hz. Again, we're controlling the render rate to intentionally make it irrelevant. We ran the Go's latency tests in the restored default performance mode on battery power. So in the rough Ally equivalent is turbo, so-called 25 so-called watts mode on battery power. With these settings, the Ally added 24.4 milliseconds latency for the Go with wired controllers. Given the equal render rates and the same CPU, responsibility for that 24.4 milliseconds can mostly be divided between the quality of latency from the input device and the display. In other words, the Go has a superior latency when isolating against render rate. Time to get into the gaming benchmark.
At Honda, we've chased down a lot of dreams, each one meeting to the next, all the way to our latest. Introducing the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue.
Resident Evil 4 is up and prioritized performance with FSR2 quality. The result was the Go's default out-of-the-box 1.8 power screen profile is 44 FPS average, with it just below the DEC OLED 46 FPS average and the Z1 Extreme 47 FPS battery-powered average. That allows the DEC OLED a lead of 3.6%. Since we were forced to use a slightly lower resolution on the Ally, these three devices can be considered high performance straight out of the box on battery power. The real default power saving profile, labeled 1V here, is significantly lower performance, bringing its average down to a completely unplayable 17 FPS. If you manually switch to power saving profile on Range Go, these are the settings you'll get. On the other end of the spectrum, plugging the Go wall power with the maxed out 30 watt profile, or 2Z, led to one of the highest averages on the chart, effectively tied with the Ally Z1 Extreme on wall power at 61 FPS. That's a 38% up over the completely stock profile of 1A's 44 FPS average. Using the normal performance profile on battery power led to a stable 58 FPS average, nearly as good as the max setting. At 2560 by 1600, the Go's behavior remains the same. The default power saving profile has terrible performance as the debugged out original performance profile. At this resolution and with these settings, only the performance profiles, both restored default and the original with wall power, make the game playable, but well below the screen's 144 Hz refresh. I'm not going to waste a bunch of time looking at unplayable settings. Suffice to say, you need to deploy heavy FSR to make this work. The higher pixel density and the resolution are more useful in non-gaming scenarios, like video playback, or if you're going to do some kind of lightweight word processing. Next up is F123, a game that can rely on to achieve decent FPS numbers on almost any platform. The original power saving mode average on Go was 77 FPS, with the DEC OLED only 6% ahead at 82 FPS average, but was vastly better 1% to 100% load. Frame pacing is problematic on several of these devices, a mixture of Windows and the AMD driver for this game. The battery-powered Ally Z1 Extreme is 9% ahead of Go 1A, but taking into account the Go's 11% higher render resolution and therefore total pixel count as rendered, they're about the same. The DEC leads both 1A by 6% ISO resolution and average FPS, and more in lows and is objectively superior as a result. Restoring the Go to the default power saving mode settings tanks performance again, we would only use that profile with 2D gains. The Legion Go's maxed out results with wall power nearly for Z1 Extreme's equivalent wall power result at 124 FPS average, but even that was accompanied by unpleasant stuttering, although to be fair, that's true of every non-deck result on this chart, so AMD and Microsoft didn't work out separately. After this point, we whittled down our 2560 by 1600 testing. We selected settings with the goal of getting playable frame rates at 1280 by 800 initially for benchmark comparisons. So running 2560 by 1600 tests at the same settings is generally beyond the Go's capability. Power save profile with restored default ran so slowly here that we were forced to turn performance mode on during the loading screen. Now for Cyberpunk, we've dropped the wall-powered results now to focus exclusively on the battery-powered results that really matter. In Cyberpunk 2077 at 1280 by 800 with the low preset and FSR 2.17 quality, the fully stocked Go original power saving profile ran at 36 FPS average, ahead of the deck OLED by 10%, but again with significantly worse lows. The higher average and lower lows is due to bad frame pacing, which we can even it out. The average might come down a little bit, but the lows will all get through. In Dying Light 2, the established pattern continues. Both the Ally and the Go have unfavorable lows in comparison to the OLED, while in terms of overall averages, the Go with its restored performance profile leads. The more appropriate 1A profile, close to battery parity with the Z1 Extreme later testing, shows the Z1 Extreme has a lead of 11%. That aligns again with the pixel count difference, so normalizing for that, we're roughly the same. The deck OLED holds a legitimate lead over the Go 1A by 6.5%, but is experientially superior to the low. Red Dead Redemption 2 had more stable frame times across the non-Valve devices. As you can see, it's not a universal problem frame pacing, but it's popped up in some of these games. I just wanted to find them. Since we didn't test with wall power, the highest average frame rate was on the Go with performance profile and defaults. Selecting the boosted power profile clearly makes frame rates higher, but we'll have to examine battery life as well to get a full picture of how these devices compare. Deck OLED leads the 1A result by 8.7%, with the 2D result leading the OLED by 18%. Finally, in Baldur's Gate 3, we continue to see low performance across all devices. The Deck OLED and the 1A Go are about the same. The Ally Z1 Extreme stands out here as having better 1%, 0.1% lows, but we've seen similar behavior in previous tests, where the Ally has some good passes and some that are just as bad as the rest. This is effectively luck of the draw. Can't read too much into that setup. So now we're getting into acoustics. This test was done in our newly built semi-anechoic chamber we debuted last year. This was a multi-week construction project that cost us $250,000, and it was only possible thanks to your support on the GN store. Visit store.gamersnexus.net and consider grabbing one of our brand new, ultra comfortable, warm, tear-down style hoodies that we just launched. They're in stock and shipping now and use a high-quality tri-blend of materials, water-based inks, and a soft interior. This video alone cost us thousands of dollars in testing time, not even counting the video production time, and we need your help to keep making them. So head over to the store or throw us a few bucks on patreon.com/gamersnexus. Here's the test. Let's start with noise level. The quietest device on this chart remains the Nintendo Switch, which operates only slightly above our noise floor, and not enough for me to detect the difference, so it's effectively silent. The Legion Go's first appearance is with 1B, which is the restored default using quiet mode for TV control. Makes sense. The Ally is handheld in silent mode. It's about the same noise level under load as the Go, the objective here, and 2B appears next in performance DDP mode. That has noise levels at 19.5 dBA, or about the same as the Steam Deck, 60 FPS cap, loudest cycle, and under full load. The out-of-box power-saving configuration is clearly the worst for the Go, other than the 100% fan speed F3. Lenovo needs to work on its out-of-box setup. The noise was 22 dBA here, just under the uncapped deck, and it shouldn't be set up this way. Finally, the 100% fan cycle is similar to the deck when uncapped and it is high ramp cycle. Frequency spectrum is up now, looking first only at the Legion Go frequency spectrum. 100% fan speed test is unbearably loud to the extent that it becomes functionally unusable in any public setting, unless you're okay with being that guy, or without headphones. Testing was particularly loud in the range of 2200 to 3000 Hz, which is definitely in the annoying end of the spectrum. And the performance mode tests, both the restored and the non-restored, were significantly quieter in this frequency range and had their biggest spikes around the 600 to 900 Hz range, with another at 5000 to 500 Hz. The power saving mode tested out of the box was actually louder than one of our performance mode tests, and this was repeatable and is just a result of bad fan configuration by Lenovo. And here's the competitive chart. The Ally plots first, generally louder aspect of the fan curve in the middle of the chart. around 1200 hertz, and again around 3000 hertz. The deck OLED with uncapped FPS is next, and it's significantly louder, particularly around the 1500 to 2000 hertz mark, and then again at 800 to 1200. It also has another spike around 3000 to 3500 hertz. The capped deck LCD is next, with a significantly quieter fan as a result of the FPS cap. The curve is also much more evenly distributed. Finally, for the Legion Go, the Power Saving 1B profile is a mix of the deck cap and the ally behavior for the frequency, with 100% being louder for everything. Now for a noise comparison of these, this is important. Testing is done in our chamber with a high precision microphone 20 inches away from the device. The noises will sound louder to you in your headphones or speakers than perhaps in real use. That's because obviously we don't control the whole pipeline here. We don't know what you're using for your speakers, your audio device, and we have to control the audio by boosting it to get it to a similar volume to my voice to make sure you can hear it on everything from a speakerphone speaker to powerful headphones. So for this demonstration, what we're trying to show is the types of noise. The volume of them as we play it through the speakers or the headphones will be about equal. You'll need the dBA plots for that comparison. But for this, listen to the types of noise and decide which annoys you the most. Up to you what you like the best. However, the deck definitely needs work on the fan curve overall. For battery life testing, we start off with dead cell, using VSync and using the native resolution. This is one of the few types of games that is playable at a higher resolution on these devices. So we've left that as a variable because it's potentially one of the advantages, and it's worth knowing holistically how much it affects the device's battery life. The deck OLED remains king with an impressive 8.3-hour battery life from its larger battery and its modest resolution. The deck LCD is next, also impressive, and after that is the Legion Go with its low-performing, buggy, and stuttery power-saving mode. I necessarily count this one as viable in most instances. The ROG Ally is next at 2.5 hours, with its 120Hz VSync configuration down at 2.8 hours. The difference between those two demonstrates that an FPS cap would lengthen battery life. Even though the restored power-saving profile led to abysmal performance in all of our game tests, it only gained 16% battery life to go versus the original power-saving profile, which had consistently better performance. The original power-saving profile is therefore overall impressive, with its higher resolution display not robbing it of performance and allowing it to run near the Ally, which has a lower resolution. Here's a 3D game. We didn't use any frame rate capture at 123, but none of the devices can really render this benchmark significantly above their respective refresh rates anyway. That's also part of the test. Resolution is equalized. The restored power-saving profile did last significantly longer than the others in this one. It's 67% ahead of the original 1A profile, but remember that it also brings the average frame rate in this test down from 77 to 30 FPS, with the lowest struggling. The deck OLED, the Ally Z1 Extreme with performance, and the Go, using its original out-of-box power-saving profile, each had roughly similar average frame rates in this test. And as a result of that, the Go comes out looking strong with a battery life improvement over the Ally of 40% with 1A, and 2.1 to 1.5, or 13% with 2B. It appears to have some advantages in the battery life department, and the deck LCD also gets left behind a bit here. As for the controllers, they last an extremely long time. We need to do a ton of testing to account for all the various combinations of rumble and wear down being faster, inputs, and FPS mode, and we didn't do that. What we did do was try to open a game and strap the joysticks down until the controllers died. But after 4 hours, the controllers had barely dipped below 80%, with continuous, non-stop input from just the joysticks. Lenovo lists the capacity of the controllers at 900 mAh each, and they claim 11 hours of battery. It's rare that you would need to worry about this. Time to get at the charge rate. The Go has a 49.2 watt-hour battery, about the same as the 50 watt-hours on the deck OLED. The Ally and the deck LCD both have 40 watt-hour batteries. Even with the extra capacity, the Go is the fastest charging device we tested by a significant margin. The results shown here were measured with the devices fully shut down, and the Go pulled 67.8 watts at the wall for 35 minutes, with the charger rated at 65 watts. It then dropped off sharply as the charging. That's in contrast to the decks, which spent a significant portion of their charging times on the last few percentage points of charge. We showed that in the deck OLED review if you want a bunch of charts about that. In total, the Go took 82 minutes to reach 100% charge, while the OLED deck took 205. For Lenovo, its result is impressively close to the 80-minute 0 to 100% charge speed claimed on the Go's spec sheet. Remember, however, that charging too fast can be damaging to a battery's long-term endurance. We currently don't have the expertise to judge if this is too fast or not. However, Lenovo has charge speed controls in BIOS. If this is something you're concerned about, or if you leave it plugged in all the time. We did an experiment with testing these for this review. This chart shows the percentage charge that is done while the device is on and idle, unlike the last one. Having the Go on at all, even idling, significantly increases its total charge time. For example, the spec sheet says that the Go should hit 70% charge after 30 minutes, but with the device on and the login, it takes a full hour. This is the only handheld that maxes out its AC adapter charging alone, and so this behavior shows more notably. Each of the Go's profiles reach 100% charge within 100 to 110 minutes, as opposed to the 82 minutes. Our main takeaway from this chart is that the Go charges unusually quickly under any circumstance. For example, it can reach 80% charge after 67 minutes, even if it's on and idling during the charging process. We don't know whether that will impact battery longevity without longer-term testing. Lenovo does advertise, however, that the battery is a 2-cell on the spec sheet, which may help explain the speed. Finally, some thermal tests for Legion Go. Look at the temperature. Remember as well that there are two other variables like power and noise. But looking at the torque testing while plugged in at 100% brightness, at the Legion Go CPU temperature at 76 degrees Celsius and a 20 C ambient. The noise level for about 20 dBA here. The closest here would be the deck LCD that allowed 1 dBA before 78 degrees Celsius. Roughly the same, considering that we don't have the same software for the deck. The Go and Performance GP also has a 35-degree GP and 74-degree drive. The deck has some significant drive temperature advantages. However, there are two factors to consider here. One is that it's different measurement software in Linux, and two is that it could be exposed to different drive sensors. They're all close. The Ally is completely like the software. So for that one, it ran at 77 degrees D die, 76 degrees 75 drive, about the same as the performance CPU Legion, which is in theory the power level in total. The CPU package power measurement is not perfect, it's not the full picture, but it's kind of the best thing we have without firing and tolerating for it. Peak temperature for the Go was about 86 degrees and held for about a 10-second period. Finally, the Legion Go's case has a hole in it over the charging port, so our first thought was that this is a useful feature, and our second was that we didn't want to blast 65 watts into a lithium battery rather than insulating foam fabric. We attached all probes to the device on the top and the bottom of it, and the device started slightly below the ambient temperature of 22 degrees Celsius at the time of testing. Then we saw a peak external temperature just over 37 degrees. That's a significant amount of warming and the higher ambient within the but it's not a worry in peak temperature, especially given that the temperature leveled off as the charge rate dropped. Since the Go charges took quickly when it powered off, we think it's unlikely that the hottest unit charge will last for an hour. However, we would not recommend an already hot Go into its case and then immediately charge it, especially in the warmer areas. This seems like the best way to do it here. As we get deeper into this generation handheld,
Dave's Hot Chicken just got the National Hot Cauliflower. They're calling it Dave's Not Chicken. This looks very promising. This is amazing. Highly recommend trying this.
Oh my God, here we go. Kimberly calculated from the beginning, how do I become famous?
it's clear that something has changed. They are starting to experiment and do different things, and because the manufacturers haven't even perfected, once again, the basics of ergonomics, that's exciting. That means there's a ton of room for innovation, and it's not just a bunch of copycats, although there are still plenty of them. The different companies are trying to innovate in different ways. We like that. So, the core hardware itself is starting to get samey in some ways. So Legion Go, the Ally uses the same chip. And a lot of these other handhelds use basically the one Extreme 7840U, and soon they have too. The older custom APU powering the Valve's Steam Deck and the Intel Ultra 7 155H coming out in the MSI Claw are the exceptions here. But the Z1 based handheld are common, and it's the specific features that matter that somebody can do as well. So the experience and those specialized features are what set them apart. Most of the devices we've reviewed so far are relatively large, but compared against each other, they're a similar form factor. That's why we bought some smaller ones separate. For gaming, the Go and the Ally share the same weakness, which is that frame time pacing remains weaker for the driverless combination of Windows in some games. This is familiar to the 2009 era of AMD GPUs, where pure average FPS throughput took priority over pacing. You'd imagine that it'll get fixed, but more people talk about it, and it's not in every game, so that's what sometimes. The gaming results stack it this way. In first place, it's the Ally Z1X2 with its 30-watt turbo profile that's fully accessible on wall power, which is part of the handheld. In second place, it's the Go with its out-of-the-box 30-watt performance profile that only functions correctly on wall power.
Good girl, Mel. Good girl, Mel. Good girl. Hi, Mel. I know. Hi, Mel. Good girl. Good girl. Hi, Mel. Hi, Mel. Meow. Hi, Mel. Hi, Mel. Hi, baby.